1997's Event Horizon is remembered as one of the darkest and most disturbing sci-fi horror films ever made. But what makes the movie even more impressive is how much of its nightmare world was created practically. From giant rotating tunnels and massive spaceship interiors to terrifying prosthetic effects, fire stunts, and zero-gravity wire work, the filmmakers relied heavily on real physical sets instead of modern CGI. And as always, in this video, we're going to uncover how Event Horizon was made. One of the most intense moments comes when Captain Miller enters the massive gravity drive core to plant scuttling charges, hoping to destroy the haunting rear section of the ship and save the remaining crew. But just as he begins activating the timer, Dr. Weir suddenly attacks him, while giant flames erupt around the chamber, forcing Miller deeper into the core as the entire ship starts feeling less like a machine and more like a living nightmare. What makes this sequence even more impressive is that most of what you see on screen was created with huge practical sets and real effects, instead of relying completely on CGI. The gravity drive chamber itself was a gigantic, industrial-style physical set, built with real metal structures, rotating machinery, rubber flooring, and mechanical details designed to make the environment feel cold, heavy, and oppressive. Several sections of the ship were also physically constructed, including parts of the central spinal corridor and the famous 50-foot rotating tunnel leading toward the core. Director Paul W.S. Anderson initially wanted these environments to feel like a twisted mix between a futuristic engine room and a Gothic cathedral, and a torture chamber, which is why the ship has such a disturbing and almost hell-like atmosphere throughout the climax. When Miller runs through the burning corridors while escaping Dr. Weir, the fire scene behind him was created using real practical flame effects, including controlled flamethrowers, flickering fire lights, smoke rigs, and moving light sources. These effects create realistic reflections and constantly shifting shadows across Lawrence Fishburne's face, making the panic feel much more genuine. Instead of depending entirely on digital flames, the filmmakers fill the set with real smoke, flashing emergency lights, and chaotic lighting changes, so the actors themselves would feel disoriented while performing. That confusion and panic translates directly onto the screen. Early in the film, when the crew of the Lewis and Clark first enters the Event Horizon, the sequence immediately creates an eerie feeling of descending into something unknown and unnatural. As the two ships connect through the giant circular tunnel, the crew slowly floats through the docking passage in complete zero gravity, making the moment feel both beautiful and deeply unsettling. To shoot this scene, the filmmakers built a massive full-scale cylindrical tunnel set, instead of relying completely on miniatures or CGI. The tunnel was physically constructed with metallic wall panels, giant circular ring lights, and industrial textures and layered mechanical details, designed to make the environment feel endless and claustrophobic at the same time. Some green screen elements were added for later enhancements, but the majority of the environment was real and fully explorable by the actors. The floating movement itself was achieved using complex wire harness systems hidden above the set. Actors were suspended using thin cables controlled by stunt crews, carefully moving them in slow, weightless motions to simulate real zero gravity. Many of the performers had to remain hanging in the harnesses for long periods during filming, which became physically exhausting over time. One of the smartest filmmaking tricks in the sequence was the camera orientation. In reality, parts of the set were built vertically, but the camera was rotated and framed in such a way that audiences perceived the actors as floating horizontally through space. This clever combination of practical wire work, camera illusion, lighting, and set design is what gives the scene its unsettling realism, even decades later. One of the film's most disturbing sequences happens when young engineer Justin suddenly loses control of his mind and ejects himself through the air dock into outer space. As his body drifts helplessly through the vacuum, the moment feels terrifyingly real, especially when Captain Miller risks his own life to rescue him. Despite how advanced the scene looks from 1997, most of it was achieved using practical effects, wire rigs, miniatures, and compositing techniques, rather than heavy modern CGI. The production team physically built a detailed airlock set, complete with metallic corridors, pressure doors, industrial panels, and mechanical interiors. Some sections included green screen elements that were later extended digitally to create the larger space environment. For the zero-gravity movement, actors were suspended using complex harness systems and multiple hidden cables mounted above the set. Stunt coordinators carefully controlled every movement so the actors would drift slowly and naturally, mimicking the resistance-free motion of real space. This is why Justin and Miller's floating movements feel unnaturally smooth and believable. The outer space visuals themselves were created using layered compositing techniques. Actors were filmed against green screen backgrounds, while miniature spaceship models, star fields, Neptune's atmosphere, and deep space environments were layer added during post-production. The filmmakers also used detailed prosthetic makeup to create Justin's horrifying decompression injuries, including frozen skin textures, burst blood vessels, and vacuum exposure damage. Sound design played a huge role in selling the realism as well. Metallic warning alarms, muffled audio, pressure sounds, and moments of near silence were initially mixed together to create the terrifying emptiness of space. The result is a scene that still feels incredibly tense and immersive even by today's standards. From the very beginning of the movie, the filmmakers wanted the event horizon to feel less like a normal spaceship and more like a gigantic, haunted structure floating through deep space. Every time the ship appears on screen, especially during those slow cinematic flyby shots near Neptune, it feels massive, silent, and deeply unsettling. Even today, many viewers assume those shots were created using heavy CGI, but surprisingly, most of the exterior spaceship scenes in Event Horizon were actually filmed using huge practical miniature models and motion-controlled cinematography. Director Paul W.S. Anderson and the VFX team initially avoided making the ship look like a clean, digital object. Instead, they wanted it to feel physically real, heavy, and industrial. To achieve that, the production team built a giant practical miniature of the Event Horizon that was reportedly around 30 feet long. This wasn't a simple model. It was an incredibly detailed structure covered with thousands of tiny mechanical components, Gothic textures, antenna systems, pipelines, metallic panels, and industrial surface details. The design itself was intentionally inspired by a mix of a haunted cathedral and a medieval torture machine, which is why the ship subconsciously feels disturbing even before anything horrifying happens inside it. To film the model, the crew used a motion-controlled camera system, a robotic camera rig capable of repeating extremely slow and precise movements around the miniature. When the camera smoothly glides around the event horizon in the movie, it's actually a carefully programmed robotic movement inside a studio. The camera was intentionally moved at very slow speeds, because fast movement would instantly make the model feel small and fake. This clever technique helped create the illusion that the ship was an enormous, kilometer-long structure drifting through space. The dramatic lighting also played a huge role in selling the realism. One of the movie's most disturbing moments happens when the crew discovers a frozen dead body floating inside the event horizon. At first, the course silently drifts through the zero-gravity environment, completely frozen in space. But the moment gravity suddenly reactivates, the body crashes onto the floor and violently shatters into pieces like fragile ice. To create this horrifying effect, the filmmakers used a highly detailed life-sized practical corpse dummy rather than relying entirely on CGI. For the actual gravity shot, the frozen dummy was suspended above the set using hidden rigging systems. When gravity returned in the scene, the prop was suddenly dropped onto the floor. Inside the dummy were specifically designed breakaway materials and brittle prosthetic components that were engineered to explode apart on impact. As the body hit the ground, pieces shattered and scattered across the set, creating a disturbingly realistic frozen body effect. The scene became even more terrifying because of the sound design and editing. Sharp cuts, cracking ice sounds, brittle snapping noises, and wet flash-like impacts were layered together to make the destruction feel painfully real. Most of the fragments seen flying across the screen were actual physical practical effect pieces rather than digital animation, which is exactly why the sequence still feels so raw and unsettling today. And that's it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed uncovering the behind-the-scenes secrets of Event Horizon, make sure to subscribe, because there are many more legendary movie breakdowns and filmmaking secrets coming soon.